We are now live, and as I promised everyone, we have a very special guest, former Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. Thank you again, Dr. Roberts, for joining us today. I didn't want to put your name up on the uh, thumbnail. I wanted to surprise people so they could have a treat today and just tune in and see that we had you on the platform today. But again, how are you doing today, sir?
Well, thank you, Rashid. I'm pleased to be with you again.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. Um, what is going on with the Trump administration? First of all, before we address the Iran problem, what about the domestic situation that is going on, and why is Trump not accepted any responsibility?
Oh, well, the situation is not good, so he doesn't want responsibility for it. That's a simple answer. He's he'll have to find somebody else to blame. I suppose
Yeah.
he'll fire somebody else soon.
Yesterday or day before yesterday, I was watching a clip where he blamed Witkoff and his son-in-law for information regarding to the Iran war. Is he so narcissistic that he refuses to accept anything that's out of his narrative?
Well, I think that he's so much under the thumb of Israel, of Netanyahu, that he can't make independent decisions. And so I think the major part of President Trump's frustration is he's not a free man. He is so subservient to Netanyahu and the Israel lobby that they make his decisions. Those decisions get Trump in trouble, and he looks for somebody else to blame. He knows he must not blame Israel. So it has to be somebody else. His son in law, Witkoff, the recent woman he fired, the Secretary of Homeland Security. There's always somebody. So he'll work his way through his own government, and they'll get blamed for the trouble that Netanyahu has put Trump in. And of course, Netanyahu has put the entire United States in trouble, and Trump let him. And this is the real shadow hanging over Trump's head. He let Israel take us to war. It is not a 3-day war. It's not an easy victory. It's having all kinds of costs, none of which were expected. And I think it'll be very difficult to avoid any of these costs. So that's Trump's position. Uh, if you're the president of the United States and you let some other country control your decisions, you're not very smart. And I think that's the basic
Mhm.
problem.
But do you think that this has a lot to do with Epstein and what they
No,
may have over him through the Epstein files?
no, no, I don't think that at all. It's just that uh, for many decades, the Israel lobby has very carefully worked, and they've been successful. You have to hand it to them. Essentially, they've taken over the United States. There's no one in the House or Senate who would dare stand up to Israel. Or Thomas Massey, the one U.S. representative. But Trump is now working to have him unseated and driven out, even though he's a strong supporter of Trump. So the Congress can't stand up. The executive branch is in the policy making. arena, circles, is heavily populated with Zionists, with neoconservatives who believe in greater Israel. And they believe that Israel is from the Nile to Pakistan. And they have succeeded for 25 years in using American money, American blood, to clear the barriers to greater Israel out of the Middle East. This is what the so-called war on terror was about. It was not a war on terror, it was a war on obstacles to greater Israel. So we destroyed for Israel, Libya, Iraq, Syria. Now Israel has us at work destroying Iran, or trying to. And this control over American foreign policy, sending us to war, we've been in war now for a quarter of a century for Israel. This shows enormous power over the government. We also know they control the media, Hollywood and entertainment, the financial sector, the universities. You know, if you are a student in a university, an American university, and you criticize Israel for the genocide in Palestine, you get expelled. So the the Israel lobby has shown it's got the power to cancel the First Amendment. So here we have the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, the Free Speech Amendment, and you can't exercise it. If you're a foreign student, Trump expels you from the country. If you're an American student, you get expelled from the university. If you are a resident in Texas or Florida or a number of other states, and you criticize Israel, you cannot work for the state government. You cannot have a contract with the state to supply goods or services. So if you are a professor in a university, you criticize Israel, you can't get tenure. So they basically closed down the ability of people to organize against Israeli policies or to criticize them or to try to hold them accountable. This is an enormous power. And then also, if you consider it, it's most likely the case that Trump's whole real estate career, his whole real estate empire, is based on loans from Jewish financiers. I'm sure that his rise in real estate was carefully monitored and enabled by the Israel lobby. So how can he get out of that box? There's no exit from that box. And if you look at a big chunk of his MAGA supporters, Rashid, are people who call themselves Christian Zionists. Well, there's no such thing. It's a contradiction in terms. You can't be a Zionist and be a Christian. Well, so the Israel lobby has even corrupted the Christian evangelicals and turned them into Zionists. There's a lot of suspicion that many of the evangelical preachers, ministers, are subsidized by Israel. So if you look at that, that's a pretty complete package of Israeli influence. We're not supposed to call it control. It is control, We can call it influence. That's fine. Call it what you want. It's there.
Mm.
There's no doubt about it. Uh, how many times did Netanyahu come to the United States
Oh, yeah.
recently? Every 2 months. Every 2 months he came to give Trump orders. And the last orders were attack Iran. Well, that should tell you all you need to know. We don't have any beef with Iran. They're not doing anything to us. What have they done to us? I mean, now, once we started the war with them, but prior to that, they were doing nothing. We were doing everything to them. We were giving Israeli targeting information so Israel could assassinate its leaders. We have all kinds of sanctions on them, economic sanctions, sanctions to try to stop the sale of oil. We were doing everything we could to hurt them and have been. And what were they doing back? Nothing. What have they done? Who have they assassinated?
Mm.
So now we have the FBI making up stories of plots about Iranian attempts to assassinate Trump. There's no such thing. It's all war propaganda. I saw we have the latest FBI plot is the Iranians are going to attack California with drones. How can the FBI think Americans are that stupid? The range of a drone, it can't possibly get here from Iran. How are they going to get it here? They don't have a blue water navy, a deep sea navy. It's all so silly. But if you are a Trump supporter and you're wrapped up in the flag and my country right or wrong and rah rah America, you believe all this because you're already primed to believe it. Oh, they tried to kill Trump. Oh, they're going to attack California with drones. I mean, it's remarkable. And that anybody could fall for this is scary. It means that a large part of or at least the FBI thinks that a large part of the American population can't think, and they'll believe any fairy tale you tell them. And so when you see the Trump regime in such desperate tales to try to control the narrative, things aren't going well for Trump.
So what happened to all this drain the swamp?
I think Trump is in the quicksand, and it's up to his chest at least. He's going in. The swamp has him. When you step into a swamp, you better know where you're stepping. I mean, there might be a crocodile, there might be an alligator, there might be a cottonmouth moccasin, there might be quicksand. It's not a place that you can just go barging into. I'm very careful about swamps.
Well, Dr. Roberts, let's talk about the conflict over in Palestine. Well, it's in Palestine, it's in Lebanon, it's in Iraq, it's all across West Asia. And why would Trump help to push this war against Iran when you and I both know that it stands against America's national interest? Is he that deluded, and does the Israeli lobby have that much control over him to force him to do something that is detrimental to the United States' own economy and political and geopolitical standing?
Yeah, well, Trump's not unique in that. Israel did it to the George W. Bush. Don't you remember the war in Iraq? All the lies about Iraq. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. He did not. We hear the same lies about Iran. Iran has nukes. They use the same lie over and over. But look, there's nothing unique about Trump being led around with a ring through his nose by Israel. It happened to George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. It happened to Obama. It happened to Biden. It's happened to Trump. So there's nothing unique. Look, what we're doing for Israel and Iran right now, or trying to do for them, not clear it's succeeding. Trump did for Israel. George W. Bush did for Israel. In Iraq, Obama did for Israel. In Libya, Obama tried to do for Israel in Syria, but the Russian Air Force showed up too quick. I don't know why Putin later turned his back on Syria and betrayed them. I don't know why he did that. Maybe he hoped he'd get on the good side of Trump and could get a deal. I think all Putin wants is a deal, and he'll sell out Russia to get it. But and so it's now Trump's term, and he's gone to war with Iran for Israel. Now, I don't think Trump understood that it was not going to be a 3-day war. I don't think he understood that. I think the Israel lobby told him that. Netanyahu told him that. The Zionist neoconservatives in his government told him that. But if you will remember, the chairman of the United States Joint Chiefs of Staff told him, no, we're not prepared for that. We don't have enough missiles. We can't sustain a war beyond a week or two. And Trump didn't listen. So the commander-in-chief of the American military knew better. And he told Trump, no. And Trump said, well, I believe Netanyahu. So we seem to be in a mess, Rashid. It's very difficult to get good information about what's really going on. There's endless propaganda. There's no real good reporting. It seems to be the case that the Iranian government did not collapse. It seems to be the case that Israel and Washington have run out of missiles. Iran hasn't. In fact, it seems to be the case that the Iranians haven't yet used their most deadly form of missiles. They haven't needed them so far. It seems the Strait of Hormuz is blocked. It seems all the American ships have been forced to withdraw out of missile range. It seems that the U.S. and Israel can now attack Iran only with airplanes and bombs. I don't know what air defense forces the Iranians have, whether they have a good air defense that they can knock the planes out of the sky, or whether they'll just be subject to bombing from planes. There's no prospect of a land invasion of Iran. It looks like some of the other Arab elements are getting into the fray. The Hezbollah militia in Lebanon has apparently woken up and is launching missiles into Israel. The expectation is that the Houthis in Yemen are about to begin. There are militias in Iraq. Iraq is essentially a destroyed state. So there's nothing to put down a militia. And it seems they're now attacking the big American embassy in Iraq. We built, I think, the biggest embassy in the world, and it's in Iraq. And it seems to be under a rocket or missile attack. It seems that the Iranians have done tremendous damage to about half of the American air and naval bases in the Persian Gulf. The little Arab oil sheikdoms, I call them city states. The facilities there for air base, naval base, they've been hit. All kinds of American radar installations have been destroyed. These are expensive things, and I don't think they're easily rebuilt. So that our ability even to protect those areas has declined. I don't know anything about the casualties, but it doesn't seem likely, as Trump claims, there's only been 6 American casualties. With that kind of barrage of damage, you would expect that the troops would have suffered a lot of casualties. But it won't be reported. You may remember the Iraq War. The George W. Bush regime would not allow the casualties to be reported. And they were sneaking the coffins with the soldiers back home in the dark of night undercover, so that no one could see what the war was costing us in terms of our own casualties. Well, I think that's probably what the Trump people are doing. They don't want people to know that this is costing us people. Again, we're dying for Israel. Now, ask yourself, how many of these people that signed up in the United States Army signed up in order to go die for Israel? None of them. If they catch on, the propaganda is so intense. Iran is evil, it's terrorist, it's evil, it's terrorist. If they may believe that, the troops may believe that. But if they catch on, they're not going to be very happy about fighting for Israel. And it's way past time for the American military to catch on. That's all they've been doing for a quarter of a century, fighting for Israel, creating greater Israel. Greater Israel means Israel hegemony over the entire Middle East. That's what it means. It doesn't mean anything else. Now, let's take that fact. If the agenda of the Israeli government is greater Israel, it's impossible for Iran to negotiate with them. The only way Iran could negotiate would be if Israel renounced the agenda of greater Israel and said, well, maybe that was too arrogant of us. Maybe that's going too far. We give up. No more. No more from Nile to the Euphrates. No more from Nile to Pakistan. We just want Palestine. Now, if Netanyahu were to do that, then there would be some opening for Iran to negotiate. But as long as the Israeli agenda is greater Israel, it means the extermination of Iran. Well, how do you negotiate your own extermination? And you see, look, this is important. Here is a recent statement from the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. This is a news report and a direct quote. Who knows? You know, the news is so unreliable. But here is his name is
Ali Larijani.
Yeah, that's him. So you know about this. Tonight, we received messages from U.S. President Donald Trump through the Omani mediation asking us to negotiate a ceasefire. See, it's not Iran asking, it's Trump. This is the most extraordinary statement now. Our response is that we will not accept any negotiations as long as an entity called Israel exists. Well, clearly, this man understands Iran is in an existential conflict. Either Iran destroys Israel or Israel destroys Iran. There is no other possible outcome. And that's right. Now, this, so far, it has not occurred to the Iranian president, which I don't think at this time is a powerful position.
No, it's not.
Not with the war. The powerful position is still now the new Supreme Ayatollah and the Revolutionary Guards. They have the power. So the president is running around blowing off his mouth, showing all kinds of weakness. Oh, we want to negotiate. They ought to shut him up real quick. He's obviously completely stupid. Completely stupid. I guess he's never heard of Greater Israel. I mean, you see, these negotiations that we were carrying on with Iran about they won't make nukes, these were not real negotiations. We were never negotiating about the nukes. These were a pretext. So we could say, oh, the Iranians didn't agree, so we are attacking them because they're going to make nukes. This is not what it's about. It's never been about nukes. It's about the existence of a powerful Muslim state that blocks Greater Israel. And it's the existence of this state that has to be destroyed. Iran can make all the agreements it wants that it won't make nukes. It won't have any effect. The war won't stop because that's not what the war is about.
Right.
The war is about getting rid of Iran, period. Just like they've gotten rid of the Palestinians. And they've gotten rid of Syria. What's Syria now is parts of it belong to Turkey, parts belong to Israel, parts belong to us. I think the United States is still stealing the Syrian oil, and parts belong to ISIS.
And parts to the Kurds.
Yeah, and parts of the Kurds. Well, the Turks and the Kurds are fighting over that part. Yeah. So, and Iraq is completely destroyed. There's no real state. It's so we have to be honest and understand that there's no prospect for Middle Eastern peace as long as the Israelis have the agenda of Greater Israel. There's no prospect for peace in the Middle East. Peace requires Israel to renounce its agenda of Greater Israel. And Zionists can't do that. That's been their goal for the entire existence of Zionism. So, in other words, there's no way out of this but conflict. Iran has to destroy Israel, or Israel is going to destroy Iran. any negotiation is a waste of time because you can't negotiate when the aim is to destroy you.
Mhm. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, that's something that I often said a lot on the show, like when concerning Iran and concerning Russia and concerning other nations. Um, how can you sit at the table knowing that their policy, their stated goal and objective is to neuter your nuclear or technological power, and then attack you? Because if we look at the situation that took place with Iran, it went from the nuclear program to nuclear weapons, from that to missiles, from that to no helping out your allies. Now, nobody puts these restrictions on Israel or the United States and says, "Hey, you can't. If NATO members are attacked, you can't go and help them." But they're trying to put these stipulations on Iran and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you can't help Hezbollah, you can't help the Houthis, you can't help all this," and yet you would sit down to talk to the very people who are planning to destroy you. To me, it is just like unbelievable.
Yes, it is. I agree with you. It makes no sense for Iran to ever negotiate anything because there's no possibility of success. And the negotiations were just a pretext to set Iran up so the American public would accept a war. But you're right. You can't, if people are telling you, we're going to destroy you and you can't do anything except what we say, and you go negotiate with them, you show tremendous weakness. And by showing that weakness, you invite the attack.
Hmm.
Putin has done the same thing.
Yep, yep.
And I think China also. I don't think the Chinese and the Russians understand the Wolfowitz doctrine of American hegemony. No American president has renounced the Wolfowitz doctrine. And so, how can Russia and China negotiate with a country whose principal foreign policy goal is to neuter Russia and China and to make them subservient, not to accept them as an equal? So, and look, what is Trump? Trump has certainly given us a demonstration of how strong he's committed to American hegemony. Look, uh, he's attacked Iran. He has the deputy secretary of state has announced we're not going to let India have its own policy. They might rise up like China. We're going to control their trade policy. So how is India a sovereign nation? We're going to control this. He kidnaps the president of Venezuela, and now he says, I'm running Venezuela. And as soon as I get through with Iran, I'm going to take Cuba. And he's still after Greenland. This is Trump claiming rule over all these countries. This is the most hegemonic statement we've seen yet. And he says, I'm bringing democracy to Iran, but I'm going to choose the leader. Well, how do you have democracy if some outsider chooses your leader? I mean, so here is Putin and the Chinese. They're watching all of this, and it hadn't dawned on them that they're witnessing the American foreign policy of hegemony. So how are they going to negotiate something fair with Trump? They can't. Trump would have to renounce American hegemony, just as peace in the Middle East requires Israel to renounce Greater Israel. Well, Israel ain't going to do it. Trump ain't going to do it. So Putin and the Chinese leadership are fooling themselves. That's how stupid they are. They're fooling themselves, which makes it easy for Trump. Look, let me make one more point, and then you get on with your questions. Here's what we should notice right now. Trump, seeing things going wrong, called up Putin. And I'm convinced, offered him a deal. Hey, look, what do you say about this? We'll remove all the sanctions on Russian oil. And we'll unfree all the ships that are already at sea loaded with Russian oil. As long as you redirect the oil away from Asia to Europe. In other words, Trump is telling Putin, hey, you negate for us the impact of the Strait of Hormuz being closed, which is driving up oil prices, causing financial turmoil. You may know that the big American banks, BlackRock, they've all stopped withdrawals from their accounts. If you got your money invested there are now strict limits on how much you can take out. The oil price is going up. It's hitting people's pocketbooks. It's hitting everything. Inflation. And this is all due to the war that Trump let Israel cause, blocking the oil flows out of the Persian Gulf. So he's saying, now you solve that problem for us and we'll free up your oil. We won't have any more oil sanctions. So what's Putin going to do? Is he going to sell out his BRICS partner, Iran, to get a deal with Washington? And look who it also sells out. It requires Putin to sell out China. So here you have to see somebody in the Trump administration or Trump himself is actually very smart, because if Putin takes this deal, then he has destroyed BRICS. He has betrayed two allies, China and Iran, for a deal with Trump that Trump ain't going to keep. And isolated all three countries. Isolated, it's easier for the United States to cause some trouble.
Yeah.
And so all the talk of a Russian-Chinese alliance, this, obviously Trump doesn't think it's a very strong alliance. And now we have the Russian business interests that are allied with the West. They're agitating, take the deal, take the deal, take the deal. So what if Putin says, okay, we won't let the oil go to China, and we'll take it to Europe, and this calms the oil price down, and it takes away the advantage Iran has in the conflict of the higher oil prices hurting the Western economies. It's a good deal for Trump. It's a very bad deal for Putin. And he will never have any credibility with allies he desperately needs. Because the United States isn't going to stop with Libya and Iraq and Syria and Iran and Lebanon and Venezuela and Cuba and Greenland. They're really after Russia and China. And the easiest way to get them is if they are disunited and have no alliance and are suspicious of each other, because then each is isolated and a lone target, and it's much easier to take down a lone target, particularly if Iran loses. If Iran loses and we get a hold of Iran, we're going to be funneling jihadists into the Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the end of the new Chinese Silk Road. And this is something the United States is desperate to do, to break up the Chinese Silk Road, because China is uniting all of Asia in a trade agreement. And we don't want that. This is something we can't control. It's too much economic power for China. And so if you really want to look at the willingness of the United States establishment to support this war, it serves a long-term interest of breaking up China's growth and influence, China's ability to organize that part of the world in trade relations that China controls. This is a fundamental goal of the United States. And of course, if we can open up more Ukrainian type fronts for Russia inside the Russian Federation, they're going to have a hard time. And so I see no awareness of Putin or the Chinese government that this is what the real picture is. And we'll see soon. If Putin takes the deal Trump is offering, we'll know that Putin is a total fool and that Russia has no leadership. And so they're sitting ducks. And look how much punishment Iran had to take before it learned it was in an existential fight. I mean, it should have been obvious to them in 2001. And they didn't learn until 2026.
Yeah. I think the Chinese may understand it, and I think the Chinese, because they never show their cards publicly, they do everything behind closed doors. Now in here, Michael N007 says Medvedev would never negotiate. Well, I want to say this: we can't forget that it was under Medvedev as the president that they negotiated away Libya's sovereignty to NATO. So yeah, he would do the same thing because he was president when the United States and NATO destroyed Libya. Now, Dr. Roberts, as you said, and which you make so many good points, do you think that it's going to take straight up war with Russia before Russia fully realizes that the U.S. and the West will never accept them in the camp, and all they want to do is balkanize Russia and take its resources?
I think it's going to take a new Russian leader. I don't think Putin is capable of that realization. So it would take a change in Russian leadership. You'd have to have a real Russian nationalist who sees that this is an existential threat, who understands what the Wolfowitz doctrine means. It's until that happens, Russia, actually Putin, I think, is eliminating himself as a player on the world scene. He hasn't any credibility, and even Trump thinks he can bribe him to betray his allies. So what kind of, just think about Trump's proposal now to Putin. What the proposal is, hey, Vladimir, betray your allies, China and Iran, and I'll take off the oil sanctions. So what does Trump think of Putin to make an offer like that? And what did Putin do? He took the phone call. He should have said, no, I'm not talking to that guy. He's a murderer. He's started a war. He's murdering people on lies. I'm not even talking. That's what he should have said. But he rushed to the phone. Well, Trump had to think that Putin is a non-entity to make such an outlandish proposal. You see what I'm saying? You wouldn't approach a guy that you had any respect for with such a proposal. Hey, sell out your country and your grandmother and all your allies. I mean, and so they're carrying on negotiations. So that tells you all you need to know about Putin.
Well, could it be
He'll sell out Russia to get an agreement. Now, you know what I think is partly behind this? It's that Russian central bank director. You know, she's very pro-American. Everything she's done has hurt the Russian economy. You know, they have these massive high interest rates. What for? I'm sure she's telling Putin, oh, the country can't develop. We can't go forward. We won't be able to raise living standards unless we can have unfettered access to the world oil markets. We have to have an agreement with Washington. We have to have an agreement. We have to have an agreement. Our oil has to be able to be sold everywhere all the time. We need the revenues. Otherwise, Russia can't develop. I think that's the line she's giving him. And Putin, of course, knows nothing whatsoever about economics, or he wouldn't have her in that position. And so he thinks he's doing the right thing. He's saving Russia by selling out allies and getting his oil marketed so they can have the money to develop Russia. Now, these are the things that are probably in background of everything we're talking about. And the Chinese, they're probably just thinking about, oh, the Americans keep upsetting everything, threatening tariffs and higher tariffs and then lower tariffs, and the tariffs go off and they come back on and nobody knows what to do. Let's make a trade deal. So the Chinese are probably just trying to get some kind of stability. And so they'll be taken to the cleaners. See, the Chinese don't understand that America doesn't have a trade policy. It has a geopolitical policy. And the trade is just a part of the geopolitics that Washington is fostering on people. So the whole purpose of a Washington trade deal with China is to get them under the thumb in some geopolitical way. And the Chinese think it's a trade deal. It's not, Trump doesn't have trade deals. They are a cover for partial takeover or for reining in another country from going in some direction that the Americans don't want them in. So there aren't any trade deals. They're not trade deals. They're geopolitical operations that disadvantage the countries, not so much in trade, because that's not the purpose of the Americans, but in their ability to maneuver. And a little bit of their sovereignty is chipped away. And that's the function of the trade deals. And now the Chinese are about to go into negotiation with Trump after the Americans have attacked Iran, from which China was getting half of its oil. Now, China should have said, well, no, we don't want to negotiate with you. You were in peace negotiations with the Iranians, and you submitted them to a sneak attack. It's dishonorable. How can we trust you? We're not going to negotiate with you. That's what China should have said. But once again, China had no ethics, no, and they're so dumb they think they're going to have a trade negotiation. They're not going to have a trade negotiation. If they fall for something, they're going to learn that part of their sovereignty is gone. That's all Washington is interesting at. Washington is going to bust up the new Chinese Silk Road. They can't stand it. They're not going to allow it. If they can block it, they will. And that's probably what the trade will be about. And China will think, okay, we're finally getting some stability about what the tariffs are. And yes, they're dreaming. So my own opinion is that none of the players like Russia, China, and only Iran very recently has understood. But Russia and China haven't a clue about what's really going on. They just don't know. And it's partly China's tradition of just waiting out the opponent. Well, what if your opponent isn't going to let you wait him out? So anyhow, it looks to me like a fairly hopeless situation. Putin will sell out Iran and sell out China. China, and he will sell out Russia in the process. China will sell out China thinking they're having trade deals when they're actually having their sovereignty chipped away, and their area of maneuver reduced. That's what the trade deal will do to China. So when it comes down to, there's really no opponents to Zionist Israel, to Zionist America, except Iran. And they're in it all by their lonesome. Are the weapons, are Russia and China giving them any weapons?
Apparently
not.
The foreign minister said that the Chinese and the Russians are helping them. I was listening to an interview that he had a few days ago, and he said, and the interviewer specifically asked him about the aid of Russia and China. He says naturally that we are allies and they are helping us in multiple ways. But he would not elaborate. He said he could not reveal the ways that they are, but they are helping them. Before you answer that, Mr. Roberts, let me give a thanks to Wondering Ginkgo for the $10 super chat. Thank you so much for your $10 super chat. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Well, I just read a report from John Hilmar, and he carefully has looked at the conversations from the Russians about Iran and the Chinese about Iran, and they emphasize that they're very sympathetic to Iran, but there's no, and that they agree that America and Israel have violated international law, and that all of this should be stopped at once, but there's no alliance. And the Chinese minister said, and there's no alliance between Russia and China, that we are somehow in agreement that international law should prevail and so on and so on. But we are not in an alliance, and none of our actions are directed against a third party. So this is a green light to the Americans. They've just both said we're not going to defend Iran, except by speaking in their favor. We'll defend them with words. So that's Helma's report. I've just read it. That's my take on his report, that Russia and China have clearly disassociated themselves with any military support for Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe Helma's wrong. You know, it's so hard to get any real information. But Helmer is a long-time reporter on Russian matters. He knows the language. He probably has a lot of sources. Another such person is Gilbert Doctorow. He is convinced that Putin was dishonorable in accepting the call from Trump to hear about selling out people. He thinks Putin shouldn't have taken the call. I agree. I don't think the Chinese or the Russians should have taken the call. They should just say, look, you've gone to war. You're causing us all kinds of trouble. How are we going to deal with you? And they either lack the courage or the intelligence or the wits, or they have false hopes. And I suspect false hopes. We know that Putin is desperate for some kind of agreement. It may be, like I said, his central bank director telling him, we can't develop if we can't sell the oil. Or it may be he has hopes that he can turn an agreement into a mutual security agreement between the United States and Russia that gets NATO off Russia's borders. He may have that delusion. That would be a delusion, but he may be hopeful that he can, that will be the result of negotiations. I have said, I think that's why he's kept that minor conflict in Ukraine going for 4 years. He hopes to turn it into a mutual security agreement with the United States that ends NATO on Russia's borders. If that's his goal, he'll prostitute everything to get it. So we don't really know what's going on, but for the short and intermediate run, the Chinese and Russian decisions seem to be playing into Trump's hands.
Yeah. I was hearing something from CBS, from Newsweek, from The Hill, from NBC, and all of them in the interview with the Iranian foreign minister. They specifically asked him, was Iran receiving any foreign aid help? And he said, sure, Russia and China are helping us in many different ways. That's from the Iranian foreign minister.
Well, he didn't say what the ways are. What are they?
He said, well, he mentioned intelligence, but he said he would not go any deeper to inform the quote unquote the enemy. So I think that when it comes to China, I think China is more cerebral in their policy. I think they understand what's going on. I think when it comes to Russia, I think Russia wants to be more accepted by the West. But when we look at this situation, what is going on with Iran, Um, I think that uh, public support should have been more. I'm talking about saying, okay, since you supplied X to Ukraine, I'm supplying X to Iran, and make it known, and make it known that you're a part of this to show that if you do this to me, I'm gonna do it to you because America, as you said, is playing for keeps. If she feels that if she can take down Iran, as Lindsey Graham said the other day, we will control 31% or 33% of all of the oil, which means that the petrodollar would still have its backing. And also it would be able to eliminate the north-south corridor between Russia and Iran. And it would also be able to break up, as you said, the Belt and Road Initiative with China. And I believe that knowing this, as you said, they should just outright, instead of this diplomatic games of chairs, I think it would be better as men to talk and say, hey, listen, I see what you're doing. Now, since you are doing this without our interest in it, we're going to do this without your interest in it.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's exactly right. And they don't. They haven't. So that's what I was emphasizing. It's possible that the Chinese may be giving the Iranians some help in targeting, um, but I don't know that. Um, it's possible the Russians might be giving some help in targeting. Uh, the kind of help we've been giving the Iranians all this time, in the Iranian conflict. But clearly, the Iranians don't have the Russian S-400 air defense system. If they did, there wouldn't be an American or Israeli plane left in the sky.
Yeah.
The Chinese allegedly have some kind of battle control system, runs off of satellites and so on. And maybe a month ago, a former British diplomat said that China was giving that to the Iranians, and it would prevent any kind of air or missile attack on Iran. Well, clearly they don't have it, or if they do, it doesn't work because they've suffered tremendous damage, a lot of loss of life. It looks like the policy of Israel and Trump have changed. They're no longer trying to hit military targets or rocket launchers. They're bombing civilians. They're bombing public buildings, residential housing. So they're back to trying to destroy the Iranian people's support for the war by attacking the Iranian people. That seems to be the current Israeli and American policy, is to kill civilians. Like we've done in Gaza. The whole Gaza thing was an attack on civilians. And so I think that's what Trump and Israel are doing now. But as long as neither the Russians nor the Chinese nor the Iranians will do what you said, hey, look, you did it to us, now we're going to do it to you. That it would certainly dampen down the further intensification of this by the United States and Israel, because they would see that it could lead directly into conflict with China and Russia. Now, my belief, Rashid, to finish this up, has always been that if Israel and the United States are stymied by Iran, and Iran can outlast them and keep lobbing missiles, they'll nuke Iran. And it will be the fault of Russia and China for keeping their distance from Iran. And so my fear is that all of the stupidity of the Russian and Chinese government is going to end with the Iranians being nuked. And then that, of course, opens up the final Armageddon. So when I look at the Chinese and Russian leaderships, I see total failure. I see a complete inability to understand a strategic situation. It's clear. We know the American-Israeli missile attack failed. We know there's no troops on the ground. There's no way to send troops on the ground. Iran is larger than France, Germany, Spain, and Great Britain put together. What kind of troops are you talking about? How many millions? It's an absurdity. And so how is Trump going to get out of this? How's he going to get out of it? There's a midterm election. He's at war. Unless the Russians cooperate with America and say, okay, we'll send all of the oil tankers to Europe, none to Asia, to bail you out so that you can survive the pressure on oil prices from the Hormuz Strait being blocked. Unless Russia does that, Iran's going to win this war. And Trump can't allow it. So either Trump or Israel is going to nuke Iran. Seems to me to be the end game. So, and I hold Russia and China responsible.
You answered the question that Region 9 asked. He said, ask him if we're going nuclear, Rashid. And you've answered it. I didn't even have to ask you. You answered his question for him.
Yeah. Well, you never know. But if you just look at it, how can Trump lose a midterm election? He loses midterm election, I think he'll be impeached. If the Democrats get the House and the Senate, he'll be impeached. So he can't lose. But he's lost the missile war. If half of our bases are destroyed, this is huge. We're talking about what? $1 trillion. There's no troops to send, and if they get sent, they'd probably just be gobbled up. They'd just disappear in the vastness of the country. And if Iran has staying power, which it seems to have, and from the statement I read you that you already knew, that the Iranians say we don't negotiate as long as Israel exists. We don't negotiate. Then they've got determination. If they have staying power, then it's a very bad picture for Trump. That's why he's trying to make a deal with Putin. And I don't know what he's going to do when Putin accepts the deal. And China will get the oil from the pipeline. That's contractual. The Russians will keep their contracts. But the oil they were getting from the Persian Gulf, which according to reports was 50% of their supply, if that oil is redirected to Europe, China's in a bad situation. It'll affect their economic power, and affect their military power. It's debilitating. And yet they're going to go negotiate with Washington. So you can see, despite everything going bad for Trump right now, how, looking at it, he can be optimistic, because his two biggest potential opponents are making worse mistakes than he's making. And that's the facts, Rashid.
Thank you again, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, for giving us your time. We really appreciate it. I'll send you the video shortly. And speaking of John Helmer, he's supposed to be on the platform soon. So so I can't wait to talk to him about these situations. And we've already had Gilbert Doctorow on the platform twice, 2 or 3 times, and I think he's supposed to come back on real soon too. So I want to take the time out to thank you, sir, for the time that you've given us. We really appreciate it.
Well, Rashid, do you post this somewhere?
On YouTube and Twitter and Rumble and Odyssey.
Well, when you get it posted, would you send me YouTube or Rumble URLs?
I'll send it to you in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
I'll send it to you in a few minutes.
Hey, well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope I was clear and didn't repeat myself too many times.
You did very good, Mr. Roberts. Thank you so much. Be blessed.
All right. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Everybody listen, as I often say before we go off the air, do right by others, not because there's some material gain to be had or some accolades to be had. Do right by others because it's the right, the humane, and the godly thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching you, remember that God Almighty is watching you. As my late, great, and beautiful mother would always say, God sits high on a throne of power, but he looks low at the actions of man. Know that I love each and every one of you who loves truth, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, remember to stay righteous, because righteousness is the only thing that's going to get you out of here. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Thank you, everybody. We're out of here. Peace.